So I guess we've now seen it all. Donald Trump, the most powerful man in the world, and Elon Musk, the wealthiest man in the world, are starting to go at it. Well, let's take a look at this on today's episode of the Steve Beeman Show and find out what exactly is going on with Doge, Trump, and Musk. Hi, I'm welcome back, by the way. I'm sure by now you've all seen that Elon is leaving Doge and the government to go back to building cars and rockets and cellular systems. Good for him. I'm happy to see it happen. But it's been interesting to watch that Trump has now put across his quote, big, beautiful bill that raises spending, and Elon Musk's response to it, calling it a disaster. What the heck? I mean, Elon knows better than anybody else the waste, fraud, and abuse that goes in on government. And let's be honest, he kind of threw in the towel and said there's nothing else he can do after cutting what I'll call measly 165 billion. Now that's not chump change. I know 165 billion is a lot of money, but compared to the trillions of dollars we spend in Washington, that's a fairly meager savings. I think Elon finally beat his head against the wall enough to say, I can't do this. Not to mention the lunatics in this country who came out against his companies, his customers, and his life. I mean, we all saw the videos of these nutcases bombing, Tesla plants and scratching cars and everything else. You can't have private sector people going into government if that's how they're going to be treated. It's totally unfair. It's un-American, and it's just stupid. But with all that, Elon has finally thrown in the towel. It reminded me of Mike Espy back in the 1990s. He was brought on by the Clinton administration to go in and change the Department of Agriculture. He wanted to modernize it, to cut out the waste, fraud, and abuse from the Department of Agriculture. Well, it was interesting to watch that it didn't take more than 6 months or so before the Department of Agriculture just spit him out. These bureaucracies are so big and so embedded. When you threaten to cut the increase in spending, they come at you like you're cutting the thing to nothing. Let's remember that governments operate on zero-based budgeting. So you don't go to the government and say, I want more budget next year based on what I need. It's based on what you spent last year. Well, whoever spends less this year than last year? So government just inches up and inches up and inches up. But that's what Doge was partly trying to go in and fix. And he just, as Mike Espy did, I think got chewed up by the bureaucracy and thrown out. Trump, on the other hand, is living within the bureaucracy that we have and trying to get a bill put across that won't decimate the country with a tax increase. And by the way, I know there are people who are going to say, well, the rich should pay their fair share. Here's the problem. If we eliminate the Trump tax cuts and go back to the 39% bracket that was, you're going to see a recession in this country, the likes of which you haven't seen in a long time. I don't think we want to push the country into a recession. I'd rather see it keep growing. So as ugly as the tariffs have been and everything else, the growth parameters are sitting there. And if we do renew these tax cuts and let people keep their own money and invest it and spend it according to their own wishes, efficient allocation of capital, we will avoid that recessionary trend. But we all know that, Elon left and half of you are going to go Yahoo. The other half are going to go, okay. I just think the guy belongs in the private sector like most of us do. He did try to go into government and do what he could. It wasn't as successful as he wanted. I think he originally said they'd find up to $2 trillion in waste, fraud, and abuse, and he ended up at $160 billion again. That's not bad. I'm not suggesting that the $2 trillion doesn't exist. I just think it's a lot harder to get at than he thinks. You and I've talked a lot about the budget. I saw a CNBC article today, and they were had in this article a woman saying that, oh my gosh, interest rates are now bigger than defense spending in the United States. Well, I've been talking to you about that for months. Interest rates have continued to go up, and they're becoming the number 4 budget item. You have Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest payments, and then defense. Below that is everything else. The problem, of course, is those big 4 take up all the budget. So when you throw in defense, you can probably get some of that, but everything else is borrowed. So all these programs like USAID and all these things you heard about, that's all borrowed money. And under this new big, beautiful bill, it's just going to get worse. I think they've estimated another $2 trillion in deficit and up to $4 trillion in more debt. Now, I know that, again, the debt isn't as desperately bad today as people like to make it. Of that 36 trillion, only about 9 trillion of it is held by outsiders. In other words, people outside of this country. The rest of it's owed to ourselves. That's how they go in and borrow, quote unquote, to use a nice phrase, your Social Security money every month. You make a contribution. The government goes in with an IOU and spends the money on current programs. So Social Security and the other trusts that the government have are loaded up with government bonds. Are they ever going to be able to be redeemed? I have no idea. But anyway, so I think what happened is Musk saw this and said, with death threats and everything else, I'm out of here. What's been interesting to me is the almost immediate turn of events in social media. Elon started it with coming out saying this was not a big, beautiful bill. You can have big and ugly or small and beautiful. And I don't think he's wrong. But Trump retaliated, as Trump does on social media, coming out saying the way to cut the budget is to stop all of Eli's subsidies. And there are subsidies for electric cars that are being cut out of this budget. Elon's frustrated because they're not cutting subsidies for the carbon generated companies. So oil companies and companies with oil combustion or internal combustion engines, they're not cutting subsidies there. They're cutting subsidies to the electric engine, car industry. And that hits Elon right where, the money is. So it's not surprising that I guess they went at it. I'm a little bit disappointed by it. I wish they'd keep it behind closed doors. I like disclosure and I like openness, i.e. the blockchain. But by the same token, I think some of this dirty laundry doesn't need to come out and just separate people. This is going to go further in splitting up the country because now you're going to have the extreme MAGA people going, we hate Elon Musk. Okay, well, we loved him a week ago. You're going to have the left go, maybe we like him. Well, they hated him a week ago. It's just this confusing political environment where Musk doesn't care. He's going to go build rockets. He's rich enough. He doesn't care what anybody thinks. But it's going to further split the electorate, and that's not good. And again, if you look at what Doge did, the reality is they reported about $160 billion in savings, far, far short of the $2 trillion that they estimated. This across the board, it's almost hard to describe how frustrating that is. I think a lot of us were optimistic that we would be able to go in with audits and efficiency people to say, hey, we can cut waste in these 10 areas. We can cut fraud. Everybody knows Medicare is filled with fraud. Everybody knows it. It's the obvious thing. The problem is on any of these programs is getting to the fraud. And we thought Musk would do a better job of that, and he didn't. And that's too bad, because now what we're going to see, in my opinion, is more of the same old, same old. We're going to see deficits grow. We're going to see debts grow. I don't know where the break point is on this. I mean, the solution is to grow. And Trump, again, you can criticize or whatever you want. What Trump has said is to grow the economy, I'm going to sustain a tax rate. I'm not going to cut taxes, but I'm going to sustain the current tax rate. Number one. Number two, I'm going to put in tariffs to get more balanced trade. Number three, I'm going to bring fresh capital into the country. And number four, I'm going to deregulate. Okay, if he's right, we'll start seeing significant GDP growth. I don't think it's there yet because the tariffs haven't begun to play out. And right now, there's just a lot of uncertainty in the business community. What business wants to make a big commitment to anything when they don't know what tomorrow holds? And on these tariffs, they seem to come and go as fast as a rainstorm in the Midwest in summer. They come and go. I don't know where it's going to go. I'm optimistic that it's going to work out. We're going to start to see GDP growth go up by 2.5%, 3.5%, 4%. I think it's possible. Absent that, the debts and deficits just grow. I don't know, again, where the break point is. You can do all the AI-based models you want, and it'll come out and tell you there's no way to really predict it, because what's going to happen geopolitically is if the U.S. dollar gets beat up enough, because we have to print it to survive, then eventually it will go away as a reserve currency. And if that happens, that's bad news. If the globe loses faith in the dollar, and in computers, there's something called chaos theory. And I was first introduced to this back in the 90s. And the way it was described to me in terms of chaos theory is cigarette smoke. If you've ever watched somebody smoke, the cigarette smoke comes off in a straight line. And then at some point it breaks down. You can't predict when it's going to break down. There's no way to do it. It's chaos. Well, this debt bubble is the same way. It's going to grow until it doesn't. And I don't think anybody can tell you when that is. But you can look and say we're on a dangerous trajectory. And that's why I think Elon was very frustrated by it. He looked at this and said, I did everything I know how. And look, you can't cut the budget. It's just not going to happen. Again, the way government is budgeted, a decrease in other words, lowering the increase in spending. If you go from a 5% increase in budget to 3%, they call that a cut. Well, that's not a cut. You and I in the real world, if we do that in our budgets, we go bankrupt. But the fact is, these people just continue to do it, and they rationalize it, and they sell it to everybody through the evening news so that we react and say, we can't cut, Medicare. Well, can you cut the increase in Medicare? Can you cut the increase in Social Security? I don't know. Apparently not. But those are the ones that are killing it. So all this cut at the margin, I think, again, that's what Musk saw. You can cut at the margin all you want. But until you address those big ones, you're not going to address any of the real spending problems. But what did surprise me a bit, again, is how fast, especially on the Trump side, he came out so anti-Musk. Musk came out against the bill. I get it. Musk, so he's like Rand Paul. Rand Paul hates this. He's like, it's more of the same. Republican, Democrat don't care. You're simply raising spending, and you're not addressing this debt that's building and building and building. I think Musk saw that in this bill and said, this isn't a real substantive bill. Trump looked at it and said, it may not be substantive from the cuts, but I get my tax cuts and I get to, push through to another day. In the real world of Washington politics, it's probably a good thing. In the world of reality, though, I think Musk is right. It's a disaster. It's not the kind of thing we want. I guess if I were in Washington, I'd probably support it too, because some bill's better than no bill. But when you look at it objectively from the outside, you just shake your head and say, this is never going to get fixed. The way Musk has been treated in his departure from Washington, it just tells me this will never get fixed. So I become very concerned that the deficits we're running will continue to add to this debt at an unbelievable rate, unless Trump is right. And when I say that, unless his tariffs kick in, his new fresh capital injections kick in, the deregulations kick in, and these tax cuts sustain, those things happen and we start to see serious growth, it's possible you could do a dent into this deficit and get that interest payment down below national defense. We'll see. I don't know. I was nervous about it when it first started, and I think today I'm more nervous than ever because I've watched how Congress dealt with this Budget Reconciliation Act. It's really scary when you think that none of the parties involved want to deal with this, really. They want to have something for the evening news for you and me, but they really don't want to deal with it. The purpose of this reconciliation bill was to sustain the tax cuts. And by the way, again, I got all kinds of people are going to scream at that and say it's giving tax cuts to the rich. Okay, who do you think pays taxes in this country? If you're in the bottom 50% of taxpayers, you pay virtually no income taxes. So how can they give you a tax cut? The people who pay all the taxes are the top 10%. I think they pay 70%. So we have to give tax cuts to wealthier people, to people who are better off, because they're the ones who pay the taxes. And the reason we need to give tax cuts is because money put into the private sector is much more efficient than money given to the government sector. I go back, I've told you the story before about the tax that was put on yachts in the 90s. They thought this is a way to tax rich people. We'll put a tax on yachts. All it did was crash yacht demand. That didn't help anybody. It put people out of work. You raise taxes on people with money, what will they do? They'll spend less, they'll invest less, and they'll give away charitably less. Well, we want to incentivize those three things. We want them to spend the money in the private sector. We want them to invest in private companies, and we want them to give charitable money away. You don't disincent those things by taking away the tax break. So I'm happy that that's going to happen. And again, that'll make people mad, but I don't really care. It's good business to have that happen. But it's one of many things that have to happen here for you and me to see an economy that grows in a reasonable, productive way. I mean, I've made the comment before, since 2010, the only growth we've really experienced in this economy is due to debt. We're borrowing our way to next year's growth rate. You can't do that. It doesn't sustain. I mean, I've said, and I'm on media saying debt must be settled. You either pay it off, you refinance it, or you go bankrupt on it. I mean, there's not a whole lot of options here. The United States is no different, except we have a fourth option. You just print more money. Well, printing money in a mass way creates massive inflation. I don't think we want to see that. You and I would suffer for that. So they've got to get control of this. I know there are people who say just raise taxes, but I'm telling you, you take more money out of the private economy, it's not going to help. You go back 25, 30 years ago, government took 17% or so of the economy. Today, it's like 23% at the federal level. And when you throw in state and local, it's like 47%. Government is becoming our full economy. That is not a recipe for growth. Again, I've talked in other times, we've transitioned from freedom and liberty to safety and security by giving government responsibility for our retirement, our medical care, and our education, and everything else. What are they doing with it? They're not the good solution that you hope for. They're great to tell you about it, and they're great to talk about it, but when push comes to shove, they're not going to solve your problems for you. Not going to solve my problems. Those problems come to us. And it's we, the people, who have to look for solutions, not the people in Washington, because they don't give a damn about you. As much as they say they do, they care about getting reelected. And again, go to the hypocrisy. We've talked about this a lot, but just look at the blatant examples of the hypocrisy of the insider trading laws that Congress is allowed to participate in, and you and I go to jail for it. They're not out for you. They're out for themselves. And again, that's not bad. It's to be understood. It's only hopeful that we, the people, will begin to see that we are the ones that matter, not them. And this budget, to me, was just more of the same. It's going to benefit the Washington people. It's going to benefit the bureaucrats. It's going to benefit very select group of beneficiaries, like the carbon-producing, internal combustion engine guys. They're picking favorites. I don't think they should. So I get why Rand Paul's upset. I get why Elon's upset. This is not a great bill. But the way to fix it's not to, set Elon against Trump. That's a disaster waiting to happen. I get a kick out of watching it, and I'm sure you do too. But go on to X. These two can go back and forth. The funniest one, I saw Musk, and his tweet back to Trump was just whatever. And I think he's done with politics. I hope. We all should be. What we need are solutions. We can't look to Washington. I think that's the reality. What's going to be the fallout from this fight between these two? Well, Doge is still operating. And so, as you may know, Doge is an administrative group in Washington that has tentacles in all these departments looking for waste, fraud, and abuse. Absent Elon Musk, I think it's going to be a failed effort because they don't have a champion with enough power in their voice to give them authority. The bureaucracy will chew these people up and spit them out. When they go in to do an audit of the Defense Department, it's just going to say no. It won't care. And absent, again, a big voice to say, hey, they said no, it's just not going to do anything. So these superficial savings that it made, they're certainly not going to be significant going forward. And that to me is a tragedy. There's so much here. If you go back and look at the United States in the 17 to 1800 period, we were a startup company. in the let's call that the 1800s to 1900s. From 1900 to 2000, we were a scaling company, right? So we went from a startup to a scaling company. Now we're a mature company. It's a lot harder to cut budgets and do things in a mature company. That's where we are. So yeah, I don't know where this is going to go. I'm going to be watching every day to see how fast it takes for Doge to just get thrown out because the bureaucracy doesn't want them. And that means we're going to have more of the same. And I say this truly, if Trump can't change the trajectory we're on, no one can. And if that's true, I think it was Jamie Dimon recently said he was referring to Bitcoin. He wasn't referring in general, but his comment was better to buy guns and bullets. Well, hopefully we're not there yet. And hopefully his joke about that being instead of stocking up on crypto, stock up on guns and bullets. Hopefully we won't have to do that. But as we go forward, and we're touching on because of Elon Musk as well, but we're touching on this whole digital age. I talked to you yesterday about the digital threats that are going on to our country. There's an awful lot of productive stuff happening too in the digital side. And going forward, we'll talk more about that. But when you think about government and what Doge just tried to do, which is to put some of that technology in, it just didn't happen. So will it be, I guess, thought in history as a failure, or will it continue and maybe have some success? I don't know. I did get some questions about it. And when I was writing this today, one of the first was it a failure? From a fiscal reform tool, I think it was. I don't think it had the impact that anybody thought it would. Again, you can say 160 billion. That's a lot of money. We don't want to just throw it away, especially when we're borrowing it. And that's a keen observation, right? This wasn't money that we're earning. It's money that we're borrowing. So I'm all for shutting that down. Did Elon Musk, by the way, kill 300,000 people, as the media likes to say? No, nobody's died because of this. They didn't cut the programs. They cut parts of the programs. They cut some of what was proved to be grift. I mean, these politicians set up trusts and foundations and charitable things that they run money through, and it comes back to them. Again, another talk for another day, perhaps. But I don't think as a fiscal reform tool, it really was a successful operation. Could it have worked? The question there is, was Elon an effective leader of it? Or was he so flamboyant and so over the top, being who he is, that it degraded the ultimate efforts of Doge? I don't know. I think Doge didn't understand the legal complications when they went in, because the executive branch doesn't have unlimited authority to cut budgets. That's out of Congress, which is why we have a problem. So I think maybe with more savvy leadership, and maybe now they put in a more savvy political leader, at the margin it can help. But by definition, what I just said is they put in a savvy political leader, it won't do the radical cuts we need. We need a systemic change to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid now. That's where it's going to come from. If you don't like, and you're not going to say, if you say, well, we don't need to cut those programs, we need to raise taxes. On who? There's not enough money in the billionaires. You're going to have to raise it from the middle and upper middle. And I'm telling you, to do that just takes money out of the economy and just causes a recession. So we have to look at modifying the programs to become sustainable. I've talked about Social Security in the past, and I stand by what I've said, in that we don't need to change the program that much, but we need to adapt it for the fact that when it was started, life expectancy was 65. Today, life expectancy is 78 or more. It was never intended to be a long-term retirement plan. It was a benefit paid out to help people tide them over during a period of transition in their life when they went from working full-time into these retirements that were very short. I mean, let's not forget, prior to about 1940, the idea of retiring, that was for the super rich. You never lived off your assets. Who did that? Retirement's become a thing in the United States because we've had so much wealth built over the last 70 years that we could afford to do it. The problem is that wealth has been squandered and a lot of it's gone. So now we're down to these transfer payments like Social Security, where we're taking money out of the millennials and we're taking money out of Gen Z and we're giving it to the boomers. I don't know how much longer they're going to put up with that. But I think we need to adapt Social Security. And if you just extend the retirement age a little bit, the fact is that's all you got to do. Nobody lose the program, but by extending the retirement age, you save the system. And I hope that they'll seriously consider that with all the political hot potato that might be. Medicare and Medicaid, I know people don't want to hear this, but a big, big change to Medicaid is if you're not a citizen, you don't get it. And that's harsh and that's mean, but we can't afford it. We're broke. The states are broke. My God, I live in Illinois. Look at the incredible deficits the state is running. Two problems with their deficits: teachers' retirement funds that are out of control and Medicaid. Both of those things have to get dealt with at the state level. And that's not just Illinois. There are several states that are on the verge of bankruptcy. But at the federal level, Medicare and Social Security have to be restructured. We have to do this, because if we don't, we're going to lose everything. And I don't think any of us want to go through that. We all want the same thing at the end of the day. We want adequate medical care. We want help in our retirement. And more than anything, we want our money back. We paid into Social Security. I want that money back with interest. And I'd like to protect that for the millennials who are now putting in all the money to say when they get to be of retirement age, and theirs isn't going to be 65, it's going to be 70 or 72. When they get there, it's going to be there for them. They'll get their money back. I want that. I think you do too. So I think, on this whole fallout today, just to bring it all, wrap it all back together, I think it's funny to watch the drama of the Twitter fight or the X fight between the most powerful man in the world and the wealthiest man in the world. They put those two in the ring on X, and it's just fun to watch it. I mean, who needs to watch drama on TV? You can go to X and watch it. But other than that drama, I'm not sure what it's really going to do. Doge came in, and it was just another attempt to rein in spending, which isn't going to rein in my mind. I think we're headed toward long-term deficits and debt. I just don't know where that'll break down. And I continue to research it to find out when, what point do you follow Jamie Dimon's advice and go buy guns? I don't know. Tomorrow, we're going to continue our look at both fiscal reform, and we're going to look at these crypto areas that I talked about yesterday of crypto safety and technology safety, because under AI and the blockchain, we not only have the benefit of what it can do, but we've talked honestly about some of the risk between AI fakes, blockchain theft, and money laundering through the chain, or blockchain laundering as they call it. There's all kinds of things there, and we want to be aware of that. But we will continue our discussion and look at real fiscal reforms, not slogans and not stunts. How do you really fix this in a bipartisan, if that's a word, in a way that rational people can come together and say that's a real solution? Thanks much for watching. Again, I hope you have a great day. And as always, stay sovereign, stay safe, and stay free. I don't know how I say that every time, but I do, because I think about it. You want to be sovereign, safe, and free. Enjoy liberty for what it can do for you. I'm Steve Beeman, and thanks again for listening.